And a good day to you all. Today I'm doing a little cottage, a little made-up place out in the middle of nowhere. This is a 6x9 sheet of Arsh, 140-pound cold-pressed paper. And I'm just building up my composition so that everything fits nicely within the taped-off area. So I'm starting by wetting my sky or my background with some relatively clean water. I'm using a 1/2-inch flat brush so I can work around the buildings and around the trees. Now the page is the paper is just damp, so I can start. I want to have some mood in this thing, so I'm dropping in some Payne's Gray in the upper left, and for the mid portion of the sky I'm using some raw sienna. Really loose application, just dropping colors in. I don't want the sky to dominate the picture, but I want it to work, with my my orange trees and my little stone cottage. Just hitting it with a bit of spray there so I can move the paint around a bit, just until I get the look I want. A lot of paper towel action going on there, lifting and taking out. Rethinking. Now here I'm putting in some, again, more raw sienna with a bit of cadmium orange to create a bit of a glow at the horizon line, because I will be going in with a tree line. Now don't ask me where these trees come from or came from. I felt like doing something different, so there you have it. They look like oranges. Cadmium yellow, a bit of cadmium orange for the underside of the trees. And I'm just putting a bit of wax in there in those rocks so I can, so when I have, what do they call that, resist? Drop some salt into the trees too. They look a little bit plain, so I put a little bit of salt in there to give them a bit of texture. Now here's the tree line I was talking about. I just wet the background a bit. And I'm getting these trees are obviously going to be in the distance, so I'm using my round brush and just loading it up with Payne's Gray and just dropping them in to give them indication of a tree line back there. And here I'm putting in some burnt sienna to indicate some trees that are a tree line that's a little bit closer. So it looks like I've established a bit of a fall scene here. Now for my tree trunks, that's just a combination of burnt sienna and Payne's Gray. I'm using the rigger brush to do those spindly little branches that are coming off the spindly trunk. I'm just adding a splash of color there to it, and a little bit of water too, because I don't want them to be too dark. Now here I'm just doing the shingles. Actually it's tile. I just see that I've drawn in tile there. So I'm using a burnt sienna for the tile, and I put a bit of resist or a bit of wax on those rocks, and now I'm just dropping in a bit of color. I'm going to do that in several layers, so I'm just going to put a bit of color in to establish what that's going to look like. Nice and wet, so I'm just adding even a little more Payne's Gray. That's just a combination of Payne's Gray, and I think I use some raw sienna in there as well. Speaking of raw sienna and yellow ochre, that's what I'm using for my foreground, so it really is starting to look like a fall scene here. Use a combination of those colors, and then I use some undersea green and olive green to do the immediate foreground. And they're mixing quite nicely, and I just lift it out with a damp brush. I just lift it out a bit right under that tree and next to the rocks to have a bit of a highlight there. As mentioned, my roof is a combination of burnt sienna, really wet mixture with the round brush going in. And then I just dropped a little bit of yellow in, some cadmium yellow at the roof line at the top. And for the dirty bits here, I'm using some Payne's Gray. I'm just letting the paint, oh actually I just showed you a bit of purple there. I put a bit of purple in there as well. Just letting the paint do its thing on the paper, letting it mix and have fun out there. So now with my rocks dry in the foreground, I can detail them a little bit. This is obviously wash then ink. Now I saved you some flickering there. I cut a bit of the film out because the sun was super bright and a little bit distracting. But I want to leave this part in to show what I was doing with the stone wall in front of the cottage. So that's just ultramarine, and I'm dropping in some burnt sienna. I'll be inking it out so I can provide more detail a little later on. Now this is the shadow side of the house, so I'm doing that just a little bit darker over there, using the same color combination of ultramarine and burnt sienna. And here I'm just dirtying up the base of the house with some more burnt sienna. And what else did I have in there? Oh, some Payne's Gray as well. Using the Payne's Gray for the base of the chimney. My downspout was just a bit of Hooker's Green and Payne's Gray. And I think even put some brown in it. Yes, I did. I used some burnt sienna for the rusty bits. So here's the shadow side of the house. I've indicated that I've got a little sunshine drawn there. So the sun is coming, or the light is coming from the right, and so all the shadows will be cast to the left. So my shadows are just a combination of ultramarine and Payne's Gray. And now I can start to apply some shadow on the ground as well. So that's a bit of the bit of Payne's Gray and some of my green as well, just to drag the shadows across from the rocks and do the underside. That main wall there was a bit plain, so I just put some burnt sienna and did indicate some decorative bricks above the window. And that's that nice little addition at the top of the house, which if I lived there, that would be my room right up the top there with the ladder. Now for inking this one, I'm using a rather large pen. That's a medium nib on a Lamy Safari fountain pen. And I'm using Diatramentis, it's document ink. And of course it's waterproof. And here, once my colors were established on my roof and my house, I just darkened up the shadows that were cast by that large middle portion of the house. Cottage, sorry. And now it's just a matter of putting the ink in and adding all the final details. Tiny little painting, kind of fun to ink this guy out. And I put a little light out there by the outhouse, because you want to have a light out by your outhouse if you're going out there in the evening. Now here I wanted to dirty up the, it was a bit plain, so I've dirtied up the front of the house a little bit. A little bit of burnt sienna. I'm just moving that around a bit just to give a bit of contrast with that rock pile that's at the front. It got a little too muddy, so I lifted a bit out. And here I'm just painting some individual rocks just to give the thing a bit of depth. Putting some very loose lines around the outside of my made-up trees. Oh, by the way, if you're looking for prints or any type of my work, you can find me over at Etsy. And there, the final little bits are going in. Used a bit of white gouache there to put some highlight on the rocks and fix up any areas that got painted that shouldn't have been painted. Let's get the tape off of this guy. It's signed. And there you have it, little made-up cottage in the middle of nowhere. Thanks for dropping by, and we will see you again soon.